It's great to see so many people here today. Welcome to Goldster and PPG. For those of you who know me better from the book club, I do PPG as well, obviously once a month, and there are 4 of us who present PPG, Purpose, Passion, Grit. And I am particularly excited about today's one because this is a charity that I have loved ever since I found out about it a couple of years ago. And it's just wonderful. So I'm really grateful to Baiju McCubbins, who is a volunteer for medical detection dogs. And I know from having seen social media that some of you hadn't heard of this charity before and are rather excited about it, which is perfect. So Baiju, welcome to Goldster. It is lovely to have you here today. Perhaps we can just start, if you could please tell us about medical detection dogs and how the charity was started.
Thank you, Lucinda, and thank you to Goldster and Lucinda for inviting us to do this talk. As Lucinda mentioned, I'm a volunteer speaker at Medical Detection Dogs, and Medical Detection Dogs is a charity that actually trains dogs to sniff out the odor of human diseases to both enhance and save lives. Think about the fact that we're actually asking them to sniff out the odor of something that we don't know what it smells like. But basically, the interest in the fact that, so that the charity was started, by the way, by a lady called Dr. Claire Guest. She is an animal behaviorist and a scientist, and started her career at the teaching as a trainer for the hearing dogs for the deaf. Her interest in the fact that animals could sniff out the odor of human diseases actually came about from her friend, who told her about her own dog, a Dalmatian, that kept sniffing at a mole on her leg. And this lady who loved her dog, the dog was so persistent sniffing out that mole that she had to lock her dog in another room. So they decided perhaps it's time to go see the doctor. The doctor said, "Don't worry, there's absolutely nothing wrong. You're only 19 years old. I'm sure there's nothing wrong." Turned out to be a malignant melanoma. So their interest was piqued. This was a colleague of Dr. Claire Guest. One day, Gillian, who's her friend who had the mole, came running into the office and said, "Oh my God, I just heard this interview from a guy called Dr. John Church, who was known in the NHS as the maggot man, because he tried to introduce the use of maggots in the NHS to clean out wounds, because when he was a volunteer doctor in Zimbabwe, a volunteer doctor in Africa, he realized that the people that were surviving their wounds best were the ones who had insects and maggots on them. Anyway, the interviewer's closing question was, so do you think animals can help the NHS? And Dr. John Church said, "Yes, I'm convinced that dogs can sniff out cancers, and I would love to try to find somebody who can help me prove it." The reason he used the words "prove it" was he had written a paper in the Lancet, the medical journal, but it was based on 30 anecdotal stories of dogs who had sniffed out the illnesses in their owners. So he wanted to actually prove it by applying scientific methods and protocols to the research that they wanted to do. And anyway, so within an hour of listening to this interview, Dr. John Church, Dr. Claire Guest, and Gillian were sitting around a kitchen table designing a study by which they could prove, using scientific methods, that the dogs could sniff out cancers. And as a result of that work, after a lot of hard work, the paper was published and accepted by the British Medical Society, that said that cancers did indeed generate something called volatiles, which had a distinct odor which the dogs could smell. So that is the starting point for the charity. And the objective of the charity, as I mentioned again, is to enhance and save lives. Is that?
Am I right that Dr. Claire Guest also had a similar experience with her dog? Could you tell us about that?
Yeah.
That was quite cool.
So while they were doing the research, and before the charity was founded in 2008, Dr. Claire Guest was actually taking her dogs for a walk, because she has plenty of them, and she opened the back of the car and said to the dogs, "Come on, go on out and play." And her own dog, called Daisy, which is a golden lab, kept literally pawing and sniffing at her breast and would not get out of the car. Anyway, Dr. Claire said, "Come on, Daisy, come along, run along and play." But then actually started to feel around her chest and thought there might be a lump. So she decided to go get it checked. it turned out she did have a very, very, very deep-seated lump that wouldn't have been found, just by normal, testing or just feeling around. And her clinician said that if she had not found it as early as she did, the prognosis could have been quite different. So even before the charity was officially founded, her own dog found her breast cancer, which then of course validated the cause and the reasons for founding the charity.
And also saved her life. I mean, how amazing, how brilliant. Yep. So no doubt Daisy got a lot of treats as a result of that.
Absolutely.
So we know that dogs have an incredible sense of smell. How does their ability compare to that of us humans?
Okay, yeah. So I think, as you mentioned, Lucinda, dogs definitely, everybody knows they have an amazing sense of smell. They're always used in different applications, such as airports to find drugs, money, fruit that you might be carrying in your suitcases, as well as other applications. So if you think about a dog, and again, this we know, but human beings have 5 million receptors in our noses to help with the olfactory function. Dogs, on the other hand, have 350 million receptors in their nose.
Wow.
So they can
350 million.
Yep. And they can smell parts, comparing to us, parts per trillion. So if I'm able to smell a teaspoon of sugar in a cup of tea or water, that dog would be able to smell that same teaspoon of sugar in 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So it's quite dramatic. Couple of other small snippets about the difference between the dog's nose. 30%, between humans and dogs, 30% of the dog's brain function is dedicated to the olfactory function, and they can actually sniff in and out at the same time. So the next time you're looking at a dog, look at his nose. You'll notice there's, of course, the nostril in the front, and then there's a slit in the side. So they're breathing in and out at the same time, very quickly, trying to determine what to focus on. And of course, determine where they're going to stay focused on. There you go.
Fantastic. So we're going to see in a little while some videos about your dogs, but where do you get the dogs from? And how do you know which are the best ones and what happens with them?
Yeah, that's a very, very common question that a lot of people ask. So number one, remember I said that the objective of the dogs is to enhance and save lives. So we'll talk a little bit about really what the 2 different applications are, because we have 2 different arms of the charity. Mm-hmm. But basically what we're looking for is a dog that's people-oriented, that is very friendly, learning. So they have a deep instinct to learn and to work. So they typically end up being working dogs, like Labradors or working Cocker Spaniels. However, more than anything, we look at and assess each dog individually in terms of their ability to do what we're asking them to do. So there's not. Mostly we have labs and spaniels, but we do actually work with other dogs once we've assessed them. So for instance, if you think of a, what's the dog? The guard dog.
An Alsatian, Doberman?
Alsatians. So if you think of an Alsatian, they're beautiful, brilliant working dogs, high capacity to learn, but we wouldn't use them because they're guard dogs. So if the emergency services needed to get to them, they couldn't. So again, we look for people-oriented, high learning, highly motivated, and friendly dogs. We get our dogs from other assistance charities. We'll sometimes buy them in. We have breeders who actually donate dogs to us, or people who give them to us. Until recently, we did not have a breeding program with our dogs, but we got hit just like everybody did during the pandemic with the cost, very, very high cost and scarcity of puppies. So last year we started our own breeding program, and we're delighted to say we've had our first litter, 6 puppies. 4 of which we've kept, and 2 which we've exchanged with other charities.
And what are these puppies?
These are labs. We are labs. And on our website, where the Medical Detection Dog website, as well as on Facebook, they keep posting pictures of the labs, and I want one so badly. But there you are.
Now, I'm right. I know that these are not dogs who are just kind of, kept in some kind of dog kennel. Tell us about the lives that these dogs have.
So Dr. Claire Guest is absolutely passionate about this. So we have Medical Detection Dogs policy is no kennel policy. all of the dogs that we work with, and I'm going to mention the two arms, one is biodetection side and the other is medical alert assistant side. All of the dogs that we work with live either with foster families or socializers in the local area where we have our training facility. So they're brought into work every morning. The parents drive the dogs in just like a school run. They come running out of the cars because they're ready to meet their other doggy friends. They'll go through their training sessions in the day, and then at the end of the day, the parents will pick them up and take them home so they can live normal doggy lives and have, weekends and evenings just relaxing and playing as dogs love to do.
So it's like most people take their dogs to dog daycare if they're working.
Absolutely.
They just go and they have a great time while they're doing it. Now, I think you have a video of the dogs being trained, don't you? Do you want to share the screen and show us that one?
I will be happy to. I think that the training will be shown when I show you the training that we're doing for COVID.
Yes.
So I don't want to repeat two videos that I've got. So you'll see how the dogs are trained when you see what we're doing with the COVID training, because I think that would be of interest both in terms of how the dogs are trained, but also that we're training them to sniff out COVID-19.
Well, tell us about that before we see the video. Why did that come about, and how is it being used?
Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit into the history. I mentioned that there are two arms. One is the biodetection arm, and the other is the medical alert assistant side. The COVID dogs fall into the biodetection side. And in the biodetection side, what we're doing is we're training the dogs to sniff out the odor of a single disease. So we're just training them to sniff out either, and our heritage is in prostate cancer. So the research that we've been doing in prostate cancer is the longest running study that we've been doing. As I mentioned, so I'll mention the other diseases. So we have prostate, we have Parkinson's, we've done work with Imperial College on pseudomonas, and we did work with the London School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene on malaria. London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, as well as Durham University on malaria, which was work that was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation because they wanted to eradicate malaria in the world. That study actually proved that the dogs could sniff out individuals who had the malaria parasite in them with about 90% accuracy. Now, because of the research that we had been done and the work that we had been doing in the malaria study, when COVID-19 hit, the London School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene approached us and said, we think we might be able to prove that viruses have an odor and that COVID has a unique odor, and we'd like to work with you to try to prove that. This is the first time, by the way, just so you're aware, we're a charity. So all of our money comes from donations raised in the public domain. But this is the first time the government did actually give us a grant to do the COVID-19 research.
Fantastic.
So that was really exciting news. Of course, it was ring fenced to that only. And this may be an appropriate time for me to actually then show you the video. One thing I'll mention is that all of the dogs who come in, they're given scent training. What was I going to say? Lost it. So I'll remember it and I'll mention it again. But basically, I'll show you the video and then happy to take any questions, Lucinda, that you or your audience might ask for it.
And I put the link to the charity in the chat. So if anybody wants to follow it and see, they can.
Bear with me. I'm going to have to just find the video. Okay. So this is the video. I'm going to start it now.
We haven't shared the screen yet. You just share the screen first. Oh, yeah, great.
I'm going to start it again. Sorry. There you go. So there you go.
Oh, that's amazing, isn't it? Fantastic. And I love seeing them when they're rewarded. So sometimes sometimes it was a treat and other times it was the ball. Tell us more about that if you can.
Thank you, Lucinda, because I wrote myself a couple of notes that I wanted to make sure people understood. So the first thing is that we train all of our animals, regardless of which field they're being, which arm they're being trained for, using positive reinforcement. So they're given a reward for actually fighting the treat. So if you think about this life-saving work that they're doing, we have to figure out what the dog's motivator is. Is it a food? Is it a quick cuddle? Is it a toy? And that's basically, if you notice, every time they found it, they got thrown the toy. So those dogs want the recognition and the play, and that's what they're doing this hard work for. The one thing I really, really do need to emphasize, though, is that on the biodetection side, the COVID-19 work is the only exception where we're going to have the dogs, and we're going to train the dogs, there's something else I need to clarify, to passively detect the COVID-19 odor on people. For all of the other illnesses that we work with, prostate cancer, Parkinson's, etc., we only have the dogs trained on samples, never directly on people. So it's a really important thing that I need to do. Again, this is research that we're doing, and they're not deployed in a clinical setting. It's to be able to be second-line detection along with other methods. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So when you've trained them to identify a specific odor, so with a person who's got diabetes or something, they will alert that individual that they,
yes.
But when they're walking past a group of people, they will indicate to their trainer. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay, let me be careful. So biodetection dogs is sniffing out the odor of one single disease. So we train a dog to say, we will reward you when you sniff out prostate. Only that dog won't be trained on any other odors, or we will reward you when you sniff out COVID-19. In prostate cancer, they're never out in the public domain. In the COVID-19, you won't see medical detection dogs at the airports. We are going to transfer the knowledge of the information that we get through the research to agencies such as the Border Force Patrols and the security people at large events, where we will train them, and then they will passively alert their handler when they sniff out the odor. Medical alert assistance dogs are slightly different, and I will go into some detail over there. In medical alert assistance, in the medical alert assistance arm, we train the dogs to sniff out odor changes in a single individual who might have an illness that manifests itself with no warning condition. So let's think about diabetes. When somebody is about to go hyper or hypoglycemic, they don't know that it's about to happen unless they take a test. We train the dogs to tell the person, hey, you're about to go hyper or hypo, take a test and take preventative action. So brilliant. That's the difference. They are taught to ignore every other odor except the changes in that specific individual. And in biodetection dogs, just one illness.
It's amazing. So to go back to the biodetection dogs, I mean, how long does it take to train a biodetection dog?
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. So with all of our dogs, we try to get them as young and as early as we can. And then we have seriously about 650 volunteers throughout the country, as opposed to just 50 staff, who help with all of the things that we need to get them to. So we have socializers, we have foster families, we have, we have people that will actually come in and play with them at the center. But their training starts as soon as we get them as early as we can. So a socializer, for instance, is exposing them to absolutely every scenario that they're going to encounter in their working lives. They will walk them through, doing on the lead, all of those different skills that they need to develop. At about 12 to 18 months, the trainers will assess the dog to see whether they're suitable for biodetection or medical alert assistance. On the biodetection side, because of the fact that those have to be scientific studies, which we never ever do on our own, they're always done in conjunction with NHS, so international clinicians, NHS trusts, because we have to put together a hypothesis of what we're going to do. We have to put a clinical methodology, a methodology of the research and how it will be conducted, and then we will train the dogs. And we have to have peer reviews, we have to publish papers, they have to be approved, blah, 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 blah. That process can be anywhere from 3 to 5 years. In COVID, it was sped up. So that process takes a long time, but the training for biodetection dogs, once we've decided to put them into the biodetection side, can be about 6 to 8 months. Okay, wow. That's biodetection. Yeah. When we decide to put them on the medical alert assistance side, it takes us about a few weeks, so about 2 to 3 months, to actually work with the person. So the person who has the illness, who we're going to partner the dog with, we would start training the dog to sniff out that person's odor. Then we ask them to send in odor samples of when they have had an episode. So somebody who's had diabetes, they will actually rub their skin and send in odor samples of, their skin, their breath, and then we'll train the dog to be rewarded to that. And then we'll start refining the training to the different changes and the different levels that they have. So quite complex, but, some dogs pick it up instantly. Some dogs are slower. So on the medical alert assistant side, it depends on the dog, how strong the breath, the scent is. I will mention, and I hope I'm not bouncing back and forth too much, but on the medical alert assistant side, when a dog has actually been partnered and placed with the person that the dog is going to be partnered with, the alerts can start getting stronger and faster. So one person who told us that her dog used to initially alert when she got him 5 minutes before the episode. Today, that same dog alerts 20 minutes ahead.
Wow.
So she said if the dog alerts, if they're out to dinner, she will actually finish her dinner, and then she will go into her car, find a safe place for the episode to happen and pass. So
wow.
Dramatic.
Yeah.
So they get sensitized to that specific person's odor.
So how do you partner those people? I mean, do they, when they meet the dogs, how do you know that they've got the right one?
So again, they'll assess the person. And in the video that I will actually show you about a girl who got partnered with the dog, she apparently fell right in love with the dog initially and said, gosh, I hope they don't have to change the dog for me. And luckily we didn't. But there was a little girl who had type 1 diabetes, and it took about 2 or 3 trials to make sure that the bond between the dog and the partner was very, very good. So I have to tell you, I've been a volunteer with medical detection dogs now for 4 years. Anytime you join a new organization, you always go, yeah, I'm really excited. I think this charity has so much that they do right in terms of the ethic, in terms of how they manage the process, is everything that I'm really, really proud to be associated with them.
That's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
So when people here might be saying they want to get involved, and can they say donate a sample to use in your research or whatever, are there any protocols for that? Do you look for those kind of volunteers, or what should they do?
So very good question, because most people sometimes, because they've heard, about the prostate cancer work that we've done, they go, well, can I send in a sample and will you tell me? Unfortunately, we don't do that on an ethical basis. So as we mentioned earlier, all of our work is done in collaboration with, international organizations. We're even working with Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's a very prestigious university in America. It's always done in conjunction with other organizations, and we have very strict protocols that we must follow to ensure the scientific methodology remains pure.
Right. Yeah.
So unfortunately, we wouldn't take samples if people came to us, except when we go out and recruit them.
So we have a question here. Have you ever tested dogs so that they cannot smell a person but are introduced to people physically, so their nose and mouth screen from the person they can't smell? Can some of the dogs still do it? Has that ever been tried as a...
Not sure I've understood the question, actually.
If you've kind of tried to screen a dog's senses of smell, can they still pick up on physical ailments, or is it all to do with the sense of smell? Maybe it's just impossible to screen a dog's sense of smell.
Yeah, I don't know how you would isolate the sense of smell away from the others. I mean, I think, do you remember there were things about a horse being trained, and the horse was getting visual cues from the person. So dogs, I'm sure, have that same level of sensitivity where they'll, see somebody alerting. Or I don't know if you noticed in the training video for the COVID-19, the trainer was actually behind the screen. when they were doing the orders training, and that's to prevent any visual cues from being given to the dog. So we do try to minimize, because it is tricky trying to train a dog to sniff out something that no other human being can.
We don't know what it smells like, so we don't know
exactly
what we're telling them. Yeah. How
exactly
amazing.
Yeah,
they are incredible. I mean, we all know that they pick up on all sorts of cues, and that they're very empathetic, and they know if you're going away. You don't have to tell them, they just pick up on it. So tell us, moving on to the kind of medical alert assistance dogs, what do they do? And I know you've got a video to show us, but can you tell us quickly anything else you need to know before the video?
So I find that the medical alert assistance dog side of the arm is the one that tugs most heartstrings, because there's a very personal story to tell. With the COVID-19, yes, the dogs will be out there and it doesn't really tug at the heartstrings. On the medical alert assistance side, and I can tell you this as a volunteer, because we have many of our clients come talk to us about the impact. So, the volunteer manager arranges for them to talk to us about their life before and after they got a medical alert assistance dog. And the impact that the dogs have is absolutely incredible. So if you think of a child with type 1 diabetes who might be 6 or 7 years old, their parents have to wake up hour on hour to test the child's insulin day and night. They can't relax, they can't sleep, they're always on tenterhooks. The little child doesn't know what's going on with her. So the impact that the dogs have on people's lives is absolutely incredible. So as I mentioned, people request a medical alert assistance dog depending on the condition that they have. They're trained, and then the dog is placed with them. And so basically what the dog does is helps prevent an episode happening, helps them find a safe place to take care of themselves, reduces the burden on the NHS, because anytime an episode happened, especially if it happened in public, the person would just collapse, and they'd have an ambulance call out. One girl in particular whose dog alerted her when she was on a train in Norwich, on a bus, and her dog alerted her. She went up to the driver and said, "I'm going to collapse. Do not stop the bus. I've already told my father to meet me at the end of the line where this bus stops, and let's just keep carrying on." Now, she collapsed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the chaos in the town center?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, huge impact in many ways that people don't think of. There's one lady who would just collapse with zero warning, and her family was always on tenterhooks. One time she fell and literally tore both her Achilles tendons. We have several of our clients who said that they would not be here today if they did not have a medical alert assistance dog, and the impact that they've had on their lives. So rather than speaking, again, I'll show you another video. This is actually quite a long video, so hopefully she expresses everything I've just told you. This is Lizzie. She has something called POTS, and I'll explain. Well, actually, she explains it. So let me just start the video.
Okay, so if you share the screen and then.
Yeah, I'm gonna share sound, I'm gonna optimize the video clip. Give me a second again while I.
Okay. It's a bit of a weepy one, this one, everybody, from what I remember. So I'll probably cry. You're welcome to as well.
And I'm gonna start it, and I may need to go back. So give me a second, yeah? Share.
I have a condition called POTS, which stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and it basically means that my autonomic function system in my body is faulty. So in a normal person, when they're upright or they're standing, they can regulate their own heart rate and their own blood pressure, but my body doesn't. So my heart rate rapidly increases and my blood pressure drops, and that causes me to black out quite frequently on a daily basis. I got diagnosed with that at about 16, 17. It wasn't too bad to begin with, it was manageable. I was blacking out not too often, but then it started happening more and frequently. I started missing school, I started not being able to go anywhere independently. I had to have someone with me all the time because I would be blacking out and hurting myself, or taking other people with me, or smashing sort of cups and plates on the floor. So it was quite dangerous for me to be alone with the condition. I didn't think I was going to have any kind of future, because not being able to be by yourself at any time or go out independently, having to be babysat at like 22, 23. I was watching my friends, graduate university, get full-time jobs, move out, get married, have babies, and I was just kind of in this childlike state. I wasn't going forward anywhere because this horrible condition kind of had me shackled to this stage of my life, and it wasn't a good time to be in, really. So I had 1 and a bit year at university, but then my blackouts started getting worse and worse and worse, and I kind of had a chat with the university, and we decided that it wasn't really safe for me to be there because I was studying animal science, so I was in the labs, I was using scalpels, I was using chemicals. It really wasn't safe for me to be there anymore. But luckily, I had found out about medical detection dogs at the time, and I was just started my application process, and they kind of came just in time, really. I heard about medical detection dogs by watching an episode of Supervet, actually. They were treating a epileptic alert dog, and I got me thinking, like, oh, I wonder if there's dogs that kind of can pick up if you're about to black out, and quick little Google search, and came along medical detection dogs. I was actually a university lecturer at the time, and I was at the back with my friends. I was like, guess what? Like, there's a charity that I could get a dog for to detect before I black out. And we were all like cheering, and my lecturer was like, come on now, like, settle down. And then he found out, and everyone was cheering. So it was all a really happy time. And then through the process, I was a little bit nervous because I wasn't sure, because it was like a last-ditch attempt. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. But every sort of struggle we came across, any concern I had, just got blew out the waters. Henry excelled in his scent training. There was absolutely no need to worry about it. But the one thing that I do remember about the process was when I first met Henry. It gets me a little bit teary every time, because, you know, you get told, don't think that the first dog you're going to meet is going to be the first, you know, the one dog for you. But luckily he was for me, and we met, and I was like, I don't want to let this dog go. Like, I just felt that really strong connection with him to begin with, and we met a few more times, and then I was like, absolutely 100% he's one for me. Went, did his scent training, came back 6 weeks later, and we were sort of officially partnered then, and then we haven't looked back, and he's just been absolutely amazing. He hasn't missed an alert since we've been partnered together. He's allowed me to finish university. I graduated this year, and it's just been like completely life-changing. He's opened up all those doors that were originally closed, and I couldn't be more thankful to him. So when Henry did his training before we were officially partnered, he had to do a scent training. So I had to take breath and sweat samples every time I had a blackout or an episode. So he detects a change in my breath or sweat. They're not 100% sure what it is, but he detects it 5 minutes before I actually have any sort of symptoms, so a blackout. So once he smells that smell, his behaviour will change completely. He'll be focused on me, nothing else around him will sort of affect him. And in the early days, he was quite shy, so he was getting his confidence up. He would stare at me and paw at me. But I obviously missed those alerts, because it's quite easy to miss them when you're out and about. And he escalated that to jumping up at me. So his main way of alerting is by jumping up at me, so it's really hard to miss. So I can sit down and have my episode calmly and comfortably and safely, and 5 minutes is plenty of time to just get to a chair or sofa or just sit down in a shop. It's completely different to how I was living my life before. Before I had Henry, it was a lot of drama and a lot of chaos when I had my episodes, because I would just pass out instantly, and I took displays out in shops. I'd hurt myself, it would be a big drama. But now with Henry alerting me, most people don't even realise what's happening, because I can take myself off to a calm place, and if someone does walk by, they may ask if I'm okay, if I need help, but most of the time it's very calm and relaxed. But when he does jump up in public and people around, they'll be like, oh, what's he doing? I was like, oh, he's alerting to a blackout. And they're like, what? He knows that you're about to black out? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, people are just blown away. Like, I've had people close to tears sometimes when I tell them what he does, because they're just like, how could this wonderful little boy here like detect such a important and life-changing thing? But he does, and he does it 100% perfectly. He's my little furry knight in knight in furry armour. I never thought that I would even be able to finish my undergraduate degree before Henry, but now that I've graduated that, hopefully next year I'm going to apply for a master's degree, and then hopefully, if that works out well, I'd like to do a PhD, but we'll see how it goes. But it never would have been possible to do a master's if Henry wasn't there. Like, I'm looking at all sorts of things, and not even crossed my mind that I might be too in danger to do it. The future's definitely a lot brighter now. Like, I feel like I can sort of conquer anything now that I've got Hen with me. I couldn't imagine my life without Henry. It wouldn't be a life without Henry, pretty much.
Amazing, isn't it? Wow.
Oh, brilliant.
So we're getting people.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
Yeah, it is incredible, and what a moving story. I wondered, you know, how long is the waiting list? I mean, she seemed to be waiting not that long, luckily, but now that more people know about you, perhaps, do you have very long waiting lists?
To be honest, it's always been long. The waiting list before we started getting all the publicity with COVID-19 press releases that we were doing was about 18 months.
Mm.
Now, the one thing, and it has gotten longer, but we assess each and every application that comes to us. The most critical thing is that we will determine when and how to place a dog based on the impact that they can have on this person's life. So with medical alert assistance, we actually started our heritage. So again, our initial placements were with type 1 diabetes and then other blood sugar conditions. So our largest number of partnerships are with that. However, technology has come along a long way. And a lot of people now have blood glucose monitoring machines that help them monitor their illness. So the dog wouldn't have as much of an impact with somebody with diabetes. So we are also now training dogs for other illnesses like POTS, which is completely unknown. They don't know what causes it, how they can make an impact. So how they can minimize the impact on the patient's lives. And so we are working with other illnesses. POTS, we're getting many applications for POTS, which is surprising because I've never heard about it until I joined the charity.
I hadn't heard of it before, no.
Yeah. And we are also working with peanut allergies or nut allergies.
Right.
To sniff out. So one of our dogs, Willow, we believe was the world's first to actually sniff out the odor of peanuts in the air and alert their owner that they need to be taken away. And we're also working on cortical levels. So if the cortical levels, which is a failure of the adrenal glands, it causes seizures and extreme pain. And so we're doing a lot of placements with that. We have some patients who undiagnosed, they don't know what they have, but it's a neurological condition. And the lady that I told you who broke both Achilles heels, they still don't know what's wrong with her. And she has said she would not be alive if it wasn't for her dog today.
Wow, so that's incredible.
Different illnesses.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question? I forget what you asked me.
I think you did. Yes. I asked about the waiting list, and so you did.
Oh, and the waiting. Sorry. Then I took a segue. So yes, it's much longer, but it doesn't mean that if you apply today, you'll have to wait 4 years. We will do it based on need.
Yeah. You may not know the answer to this, but how many medical alert assistance dogs does the charity currently have?
Just under 100.
Right. Okay. Wow.
That are outplaced, and they're all across the country. So it's not just we don't have client partnerships just next to our headquarters. We've got them all over the country.
We've had a very, very interesting question in here. Thank you for this. How is the dog's health protected? Because the dogs are exposed to all manner of diseases in the course of their work. What a great question.
That is a great question. So let me give you the example of the COVID-19 research, for instance. The COVID-19 samples that the dogs were exposed to was a dead sample, not a infectious sample. Again, working with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, they're always working on things that have been deactivated, so to speak. But we also wanted to make sure that we had the welfare of the socializers, the fosterers, who were taking care of the dogs every night. So they established different protocols where the dogs would, so there was different leads, different handles. The dogs were actually washed down each day before they were sent back to the owners, and vice versa. So they maintained different sets of, all of that. So that was all taken into account into the study.
Right, brilliant. So you've never had a dog that's had any problems?
No, they're inactivated samples.
As well. I mean, what happens when a dog, because obviously they get to the end of their working life, what happens to those dogs? It must be very hard, like the woman that we saw there. What happens when Henry is no longer able to work with her?
So we, this is a good question, and I'm going to make this a slightly longer answer too. So for the medical alert assistance dogs that are placed with our client partnerships, we make sure that, first of all, there's a high level of accreditation. So we will not place a dog in a person's home until the dog is responding with a 90% accuracy on alerts. But as Lizzie said, and most people say that the dog never misses an alert, and less than 10% false positives. So we accredit the dogs ourselves, as well as the the accreditation, the other national, international accreditations that we actually subscribe to. So when a dog alerts, the person who's partnered with the dog has a responsibility to make sure that the dog is alerting to the level of the high level or degree of accuracy that we want them to. So the dog doesn't get a treat until it's validated. So that the point I was making was that we don't determine an age when a dog is going to get retired. We'll do it when the dog is not motivated to respond to that high level of accuracy anymore. Of course, with every person, we start monitoring them when we know that that's about to start, when they're growing older. We actually monitor very, very carefully. But we'll also make sure that the person who's partnered with a dog is given a choice as to whether to keep it as a pet. And some people do.
Oh, good.
And then they're given priority to get a replacement dog. I'll also tell you that if the person chooses not to keep it because they're old, infirm, or any other reason, they can be rehomed. I will tell you that I'm on the waiting list, and I've been with the company with medical detection dogs for 4 years, and I haven't got one yet.
So tell us how people can, if they wanted to. I mean, how do they get on the waiting list? As you say, it's not a short-term thing, but should they want to? Do they apply to the charity? Is there a particular way?
Any contact would need to be with the charity, and they would validate.
Well, I hope we get one soon.
I'm on tenterhooks, believe me.
So we're coming sadly towards the end of our time, but what help does the charity need? I mean, and how much does it cost to train a dog? I mean, that's two different questions.
So training a dog until the point that we decide whether they're going into medical alert assistance or bio detection costs us about £29,000 for the first 18 months of the dog's life. Wow. So that might seem like a lot, but I think you see based on the work that we do that it's money well spent, and that includes everything: their care, their veterinary bills, etc., etc. Our foster families don't have to pay for that. We pay for the dogs until they're deployed. On the biodetection side, we continue to pay for the dogs because they are actually medical detection dogs. On the medical alert assistance side, until the dog has been placed with the person, we pay for everything until that point. And then the person who it's partnered with starts to take responsibility for insurance and food and that kind of stuff. We are a charity. And so, of course, we're wholly dependent on funds that people send us, other than the money that came to us from the government for COVID-19 research. So, of course, the biggest thing that people can do is send donations. However, as I mentioned, we have 50 employees, most of whom are part-time, and 650 volunteers. So if somebody doesn't feel like they can give a donation, like things like sponsor a puppy or fundraising through events or any other thing, biscuit cake afternoons or whatever. We can use volunteers. We can use volunteers such as socializers, fosterers, people like myself who don't live next to the center but do speakers. I'm a volunteer speaker trying to raise both awareness and funds. So there are many other things that people can do as a volunteer. Sometimes people help with, and honestly, like I said, 650 volunteers to 50 employees is an incredible ratio. I love doing it.
It's wonderful. Somebody has asked for the email address, so I am going to put it, the one that I found, which is operations@medicaldetectiondogs.org.uk. I'm putting it into the chat right now. This is from their website, and I would also say I've shared the link already earlier. www.medicaldetectiondogs.org.uk. And I would say, if you can't do anything else, please share that with your friends, put it on your social media page, tweet about it, tell them all how wonderful Baiju was today and how she's inspired you to want to donate. But they also do things. They sell Christmas cards every year, which sadly they sold out this year before I could get mine because they're fabulous. I love receiving them.
Thank you, Lucinda.
So there's many ways that I think you can support the charity. I think it's just a really fantastic one. And thank you. We've got a message here saying wonderful work, very interesting.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jean.
And for anybody else who wants to know what's coming up, and before I come back to you, Baiju, I'm just going to give people an idea of what is coming up. So on On the book club this week, we have coming up, because just so that I know everybody's here for PPG, but also, of course, we've got the book club as well. On Thursday, the 17th of March, Humphrey Hawksley is going to be talking to Arthur I. Miller. He's not talking to the playwright Arthur Miller. He's not doing a seance or anything. Arthur I. Miller, who has written a book called The Artist in the Machine, the world of AI-powered creativity. Really fascinating. And on Friday, the 18th of March, I'm going to be talking to a lovely woman called Melanie Hewitt. She has written her first novel and is now working on her second, and it's called Looking for the Durrells. She basically fell in love as a child with the works of Lawrence and Jerry Durrell, and I'm sure many of you have been watching the Durrells on TV. And so this novel is about a young woman who goes to Corfu for a month to research them. And then next week, we've got Humphrey is interviewing KJ Howe about the thriller Skyjack. And then again, the following week, he's interviewing Namita Gokhale, who is talking about her novel, The Blind Matriarch. And then on PPG, we've got some fantastic events coming up. So I'm just trying to find... my computer's decided to lose it all for the moment. So next Tuesday, Humphrey is interviewing Ulrich Larsen, a chef who was forced to take early retirement due to chronic inflammation of the pancreas. Despite living on government benefits, he infiltrated North Korea to the highest level, doing what the CIA couldn't. Really, really fascinating. And Alistair Hignall on the 29th of March is interviewing Sir Clive Woodward, England's World Cup winning coach, ex-director of football at Southampton and part of the British Olympic Association. And then next month on the 5th of April, Rosie Stancer is interviewing Mike Laird, the explorer, traveller and filmmaker. And the following week, I am interviewing Sasha Bates, who is an expert in grief. She's a psychotherapist. She's an author, has written books about grief, and she's just really amazing. I met her at the Dubai Literary Festival and thought, we've got to get her on to PPG. She's just a really, really interesting woman. So we've got all these wonderful things coming up. So Baiju, thank you so much for coming today. Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us before we leave, or anything you'd like people to take away with them?
No, first of all, thank you for inviting us. Of course, if I've inspired you to give a donation, Lucinda will be happy to send you the link to the page where you can donate directly to Medical Detection Dogs. However, I would ask that you do say that if you decide to make a donation, put on the reason for giving as a part of the Goldster talk, because that helps us track the effectiveness of our different fundraising efforts. Beyond that, thank you for your support. If you'd like to volunteer, become a volunteer, same thing. And I genuinely say thank you to everyone who's been sending me comments or sending us comments, and thank you.
Yeah, wonderful comments there. Great talk. Thank you so much. Very informative. What wonderful dogs. Totally. Thank you. Great work. Life-changing work. Thank you for telling us all about this brilliant charity. Really is life-changing work. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. Baiju and I will turn off our videos now, and then Stephanie will end it. I think she's going to give you a little poll to fill out. Thank you so much for everybody for these great comments. And I'll see you on Friday, and Humphrey will see you on Thursday for the book club.
So I stop my video, don't I?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you.